Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. My name is Steph and today's video is going to be about something that I've been thinking about for a little while now. I feel like there's been a bit of a resurgence, almost a popularity of this reading a book from every country in the world challenge. If you don't know, this challenge is one where you basically try and read a book from every country in the world. And I've also been watching a lot of the Invisible Cities videos as well, which is kind of a similar concept. I think it was started by a curious reader. I'll link below. But Invisible Cities is basically where people try and read as much translated literature as they can from around the world, and not just literature, but also using it as like an entry point to learn about other cultures. And so they're also looking at like movies and music and cooking. And watching these videos has really got me thinking, because I love to travel. But when I travel, I love to read books that are set in that country or in that place. But I was watching these, tallying up the books from all of the countries that I've read myself, and I realized something I'm a little ashamed to admit. That is that almost all of the books that I've read when I've been traveling has been books that are written by American authors and set in other countries. I say most, but actually not one of the books that I have read while I was overseas was actually written by a person who lived in that country and wrote that book. And I've been thinking about this and feeling kind of bad about this, because for me this is a huge, first of all, missed opportunity, but also kind of problematic for a couple of reasons. The primary being, I have been using it to create a sense of place when I am traveling and as an entry point into understanding the local culture. But along with that, I've been getting a really heavy American filter, even if the book I'm reading is from the diaspora. And now I don't want to get sticky about identity politics. The diaspora books are wonderful. I love them and I do count them. But for some countries and some places that I've been, it's also a missed opportunity to explore literature and authors that might be lesser known. And that's kind of my second problem, is that publishing is already so Euro-American centric. And I've been really thinking about this a lot living in Singapore, which has its own kind of publishing houses and pretty vibrant literary community. So that brings me to the challenge. I'm going to be joining in and reading books from around the world. This is like a long-term challenge. I'm not gonna finish it this year. Probably it will need a few years to actually be able to hit all of the different countries. But alongside and kind of as a part of this, I'm gonna do another little sort of series. Because Singapore is so conveniently situated in Southeast Asia, I can go to Yogyakarta in less than 2 hours. And so I'm planning lots of like little weekend trips here and there where I'm going to bring you along. I'm going to experience the culture and I'm going to read a book by a local author as well. So some of the countries I know for sure that I'm going to be hitting are Vietnam, Yogyakarta. I'm going to be going back to Canada, and I'm hoping to go to either Thailand or Laos as well. So I thought that before I jump into the books that I'm wanting to read, I'll quickly do a little count up of how many countries I have already read. For some of these countries, I have only read the diaspora, and I do hope to at some point loop back and reread some of those. But going forward, I am going to make more effort to kind of branch out and read from authors who are currently living in their country of origin. This is not because I want to fetishize the idea of like homeland, but actually because I'm trying to explore things that maybe get less marketing or that I wouldn't normally have access to. For Afghanistan, I've read 1,000 Splendid Suns. Australia, I have a lot of J. Kristoff. Austria, I've read a lot of psychological kind of books. For example, Eric Kendall's The Age of Insight. Some time ago, I read The Alchemist, which is Paul Coelho from Brazil. Again, Canada, I've read gobs of Canadian literature. I am Canadian. For Egypt, I read another diaspora book, If an Egyptian Cannot Speak English. France, I've read a lot of French stuff, both in school and out of it. My favorite story to come out of France that I can think of right now is Les Mis. I love it forever. Something about it just destroys my heart. For Germany, I grew up on the stories of Cornelia Funke. Dragon Rider and Inkheart are all-time favorites. Actually, I would love to reread those one day. They're so good. Greece, I have mostly read classical stuff. I have a Greek Actually, he's my boss. I'm gonna ask my Greek boss what kind of Greek lit that is more contemporary I should pick up. Ireland, I love the Dublin Murder Squad series by Tana French. For Israel, I haven't read a book from Palestine yet, I'm going to. But for Israel, Rise and Kill First is one of the best nonfiction books I've ever read. It's about the history of the Mossad, the Shin Bet, and basically Israel's history of targeted assassination. And this one's really fascinating, and I'll probably try and talk more about it again at another time. Malaysia, I've read The Ghost Bride and The Night Tiger. Mexico, I've read quite a few from the diaspora. So Celia Morena Garcia is Canadian-Mexican. I love a lot of her books. I also read Water for Chocolate a very long time ago. I don't really remember much of anything from that one. New Zealand, I have Gideon the Ninth, and I've also read quite a bit of Nalini Singh as well. Poland, I read The Witcher, and several years ago I also had an obsession with Russian lit. So I've also read The Master and the Margarita pretty recently. I really enjoyed this one. It's great, it's hilarious. For Senegal, I have read At Night All Blood is Black. This is a very interesting book about World War I. And I believe the author is currently a professor at a university somewhere in France. South Korea, I read The Disaster Tourist. This is a really interesting kind of dystopian-esque eco-thriller about a woman who works for a tour company that specializes in taking people around to look at the aftermath of different kinds of natural disasters. I talked about Sweden and the Millennium series pretty recently by Stieg Larsson. I'm also in the middle of reading Let the Right One In, I believe it's called. It's a vampire novel that had a really great TV show or TV movie several years ago. And then the UK and the US. We know there's lots of books from those two countries, the countries I have read from the most. So let's do some stats. Counting the diaspora, I have read 23 countries. This is way more than I actually was expecting to have read, but it's still only about 12% of the world's countries. And that leaves me with about 173, if I can do math, countries left. So right now I'm going to show you a map just to visualize it in kind of a different way. The green countries are the ones that I've already read, and then the pink countries are the ones that I want to read sometime in the future. You will notice on this map I have kind of striped it with green and pink. That's because I read a lot of Canadian lit, but I haven't really read a whole lot of Canadian literature written by Indigenous authors, and so that's something that when I go back to Vancouver this year, I really want to prioritize. I'm not going to be setting myself a specific genre or be too tight with the parameters because I want to, first of all, see what is popular in these countries, but also so I have the freedom a little bit to use it as a way to explore some of the maybe genres that the country is really known for. For example, in Southeast Asia especially has a lot of kind of magical realism, speculative elements that rely heavily on sort of folk horror and mythology from the area. So in terms of my upcoming countries, the books that I'm going to be reading in the near future, I am so excited to read this one. This is Man Tiger, and it is written by an Indonesian author, and so this is the one I'm going to read on a weekend trip to Yogyakarta. I think it's only like 150 or so pages, and I don't know anything about it, but let me read the back for you. Man Tiger tells the story of two interlinked and tormented families, and of the Margio, a young man ordinary in all particulars, except that he conceals himself within a supernatural female white tiger. The inequities and betrayals of family life coalesce all around and torment this magical being. An explosive act of violence follows, and its mysterious cause is unraveled as events progress towards a heartbreaking revolution. Revelation, not revolution, it's a revelation. So, I don't know, it sounds good. People say it's magical realism. It's supposed to be, I'm wondering if it will be a little bit sad. So I'm also planning to read Fisherman King, and that one is set in Brunei. I don't have any trips planned for Brunei right now, but I am really looking forward to this one. It's also about sort of mythology and history and family secrets, I think. I'm a little embarrassed to say that I have been living in Singapore for almost 3 years and I have not yet read any Singaporean books. So I have The Gatekeeper here. It was recommended to me by a friend so long ago. I'm gonna read it soon, I promise. And I also mentioned this one in my spring TBR, so it's on the list, it's happening. I also heard about a book or an author from one of you guys actually in review. She also has an Instagram, I will link it below, but that is Labyrinth by, I'm gonna get his name right, Jorge Luis Borges? I hope I get better at pronouncing people's names through this because it's really bad right now. I have a long way to go. Argentina, I believe, is known for its sort of magical realism and sort of all of South America, I think. So that's something I'm really excited to kind of dive into and learn a little bit more about. And also India. I have traveled to India. It was like 10 years ago, but I read The Life of Pi. It was written by a Canadian author. It was a good book, but I would like to return to India and read The Ones Who Swam with the Fishes. I'm going to probably read this with a local friend in Singapore who recommended this to me. It's a coming-of-age magical realism type book, I believe, that draws on a lot of mythology again and the Apsara, so I'm really excited about that. And then a Filipina friend recommended Never Have I Ever by Isabel Yap. I ordered this one, it's on the way, but my friend described it as sort of like a short story collection that has a lot of local folklore and mythology tied into it and everyday life in the Philippines. The cover is beautiful, I'm so excited for it to arrive. And then Spain, The Shadow of the Wind, I've had it on my TBR for a ridiculous amount of time at this point, so I'm gonna get to that one at some point. I think it also is supposed to be a little bit dark academia. This is supposed to follow an antiquarian book dealer during the World War II in Barcelona, and I believe it's kind of like a mystery with a lot of secrets and riddles and things kind of unfolding from there. And I am going to be traveling to, as I said, Thailand, Vietnam, or Laos. Well, Vietnam for sure. And I'm still looking for books from these areas that I might be interested in. I am particularly interested in speculative folklore, mythology, anything like that. But if anybody has any suggestions, please let me know. And finally, I'm going to be going back to my hometown, as I said. So for Canada, I want to read more Indigenous Lit. I have quite a few, actually I have a very extensive list, but two that I'm really excited to pick up are actually by a Haida artist. And so he's kind of known for blending Indigenous art and Indigenous stories with manga. So I've never read any manga, that's something else I want to get to during this year, but there's two books this author has written, and the first one is called Red, a Haida manga. This is inspired by a traditional oral narrative among Haida, and it's been compared to Oedipus Rex and Macbeth. So I don't know anything else about it, I just know it looks beautiful, it sounds interesting, and it's an Indigenous artist who I want to support more. And the other one is by the same author, called Carpe Fin, and I understand this to be about ecological destruction and how it impacts marine life, but that's all I know. So that's the plan. I hope that you guys are as excited and interested in this as I am. I go to Indonesia in 2 weeks, so probably 3 weeks from when this video is posted. My first travel reading with me around the world vlog is going to be posted as well. But even when I'm not traveling, I'm still going to be reading. I'm still going to be exploring these cultures from my living room, and I'm going to vlog about that too. I'm going to take you guys with me, and hopefully we'll do other interesting things, similar to how Invisible Cities does it, where we're going to cook together, we're going to read, watch movies, and do things that will allow us to kind of fully immerse and engage with the book and the culture that it comes from. Thanks for joining me, guys. I'll see you guys soon. Bye-bye.